Welcome. It is Verdict with Senator Ted Cruz, Ben Ferguson with you. It's nice to have you along with us today. And Senator, you've run for president before, and Hunter Biden may be calling you because apparently he's thinking about running for president as well in this new interview, on top of the fact he's very angry with rich Democrats that helped his dad get elected the first time.
I got to say, we've seen bad interviews, but wow. Like Hunter Biden utterly and completely melted down. There's an old line that a gaffe in Washington is when a politician actually says something they believe. Well, Hunter Biden let loose. He is the id of the Democrat Party. He's announced apparently he's launching a campaign for president. I actually think he'd be a fantastic representative of today's Democrat Party. He embodies everything today's Democrats stand for. We're going to break down this train wreck of an interview, and actually that's not fair to train wrecks. Because they're usually more disciplined, more orderly, and result in less chaos than this interview. We're also going to talk about legislation that I've introduced this week called the Stop Funders Act, to go after the people who are writing the checks that are funding these pro-illegal immigrant riots, that are funding anti-Semitic riots, that are funding Antifa riots, that are funding Black Lives Matter riots. We're going to talk about following the money. And finally, we're going to talk about a growing national security threat and law enforcement threat, which is drones. We're seeing criminal cartels using drones. We're seeing terrorists using drones. And right now, the current legal system, the federal government, is not prepared to keep us safe. We're going to talk about the threat of drone warfare, the next generation of threats our families and our country are facing.
Yeah, it's a really important issue. We're going to deal with that in a second. Want to take a moment and talk to you real quick about our good friends over at Patriot Mobile. Look, you've got a lot of choices with cell phone service, and there's a lot of new ones popping up all the time, but here's the truth. There's only one that boldly stands in the gap for every American and believes that freedom is actually worth fighting for, and that company is Patriot Mobile. Now, I'm going to save you money on your cell phone bill, and I'm going to make switching to Patriot Mobile today so easy. You're not going to sacrifice quality or service. If you're worried about coverage, don't be. Patriot Mobile uses all three major U.S. networks, and if you have service in this country today where you are, you're going to have good or better coverage with Patriot Mobile. Now, here's the other thing. Switching is so easy now. You can keep your same number. You can keep your same phone. You can upgrade to a new phone. And Patriot Mobile has a 100% U.S.-based team. They'll get you activated literally in minutes from the comfort of your home or your office. If you're stuck in a contract or owe money on your phones, don't let that make you stop switching. There's no worries because Patriot Mobile has a contract buyout program, and this is how we win, folks, by aligning our spending with our values. Because every dollar you spend at Patriot Mobile, they give back. They take about 5% of your bill every month at no extra cost to you. They give it back to people that are supporting our First or Second Amendment rights and the rights of unborn children organizations as well. They also give to our veterans, our wounded warriors, and our fallen heroes' families to support them. So make a difference with every text you send. Check out Patriot Mobile. PatriotMobile.com/verdict. That's PatriotMobile.com/verdict. Or you can call them 972-PATRIOT. And we use the promo code verdict. You're going to get a free month of service. So all you got to do is switch today. PatriotMobile.com/verdict or 972-PATRIOT. All right, so Senator, let's just start with this interview. It was a 3-hour interview. Once a crackhead, always a crackhead was the takeaway for me. And Hunter Biden loves to use the F-bomb. That's takeaway number 2. He's really angry, though, at the Democratic machine for turning on Daddy. That got him really fired up.
Yeah, I got to say, one of the consequences of this interview, it's actually had a real impact on the Verdict podcast, because it's forced us to increase our compensation for Diaz, our producer, because the amount of time that he's had to put in just to bleeping the F-bombs.
Yes.
I mean, it really is.
Full time. Look, he went pro in it.
There are overtime limits. We're going to play this, and let me say thank you to Diaz for hitting bleep, bleep, bleep. You got to be really fast on this. Give a listen to Hunter Biden's careful, nuanced assessment of George Clooney, of David Axelrod, of the graybeard eminences in the Democrat Party. Here, give a listen.
I don't have to be nice. Number one, I agree with Quentin Tarantino. George Clooney is not a actor. He is a I don't know what he is. You. What do you have to do with anything? Why do I have to listen to you? What right do you have to step on a man who's given 52 years of his life to the service of this country and decide that you, George Clooney, are going to take out basically a full-page ad in the New York Times to undermine the president at a time in which, by the way, what do people care about the most? Why do you think that the Republicans have an advantage over us? Because they're unified. They will go along with anything. I wasn't asking anybody to go along with anything. I was asking people to go along with this. The most successful administration in my lifetime.
I mean, Senator, it was successful. Hunter Biden said so, and he wasn't asking anybody to go along with anything unless you were sending money from Ukraine or from Russia or from China. Outside of that, or buying some of his artwork. I mean, this was just a straight shooting guy, right?
Look, it was the most successful administration of his lifetime. Now, to be clear, Hunter has a memory of about 4 seconds. So in the last 4 seconds that he can remember, it was the most successful he can remember because he's blocked out the current administration. You look at, listen, even Democrats are not making arguments that Joe Biden was a successful administration. It was a train wreck. Joe Biden gave us a new Trump presidency. He gave us a Republican Senate. He gave us a Republican House. And it's because every policy that the Democrats adopted was a disaster. Open borders, 12 million people invading this country. The American people didn't like. The victims of crime, the American people didn't like. The disastrous war on American energy that drove inflation, drove up the cost for working people across the country, the American people didn't like. And as bad as all the domestic policy was, the foreign policy was even worse. Every friend of America, Joe Biden and the Democrats abandoned. Every enemy of America, Joe Biden and the Democrats showed weakness and appeasement. So Biden and the Democrats inherited peace and prosperity, and we were given instead two wars. We were given the war in Ukraine and the absolute disaster of October 7th. Why? Because Joe Biden and the Democrats gave $100 billion to Iran that they used to fund the death squads on October 7th. That is the legacy of the Biden presidency. There is not a single Democrat in the Congress that I know of that is defending the Biden presidency, but to Joe Biden and to Hunter Biden, the problem is George Clooney. That clearly is the problem. But I got to say, Hunter went further than that, and I want you to listen to what he had to say about El Salvador, because he's really mad that President Trump is deporting violent, criminal, illegal alien Venezuelan gang members. Listen to Hunter Biden's solution to stop this.
But these guys think that we need to run away from all values in order for us to lead. I say, you. How are we getting those people back from fucking El Salvador? Because I'll tell you what, if I became president in 2 years from now, or 4 years from now, or 3 years from now, I would pick up the phone and call the president of El Salvador and say, you either send them back or I'm going to invade. It's a crime what they're doing. He's a dictator thug.
Bukele or Trump?
Both.
Biden 2028 campaign right there. Slogan, I'll invade El Salvador and anybody else that makes me blank and angry, right?
So to be clear, you're doing some math there, because you said it's Biden 2028, and Hunter was clear. He said, if I became president in 2 years or 4 years or 3 years, apparently he doesn't know when the presidential election was. Maybe it's 27, maybe it's 28, maybe it's 29, maybe it's 42.
Hey,
math
when it's
is
weekend at Bernie's at the White House when he was there, does it really matter what election year it is, right?
I do like that he broke the news that apparently Hunter is running. It is Hunter 28. You're right. That's at least what they'll print on the bumper stickers. And by the way, does anyone better represent the mess that is today's Democrat Party? The corruption, the anger, listen to what he just said. If he were president, he would invade El Salvador. He would send the military to invade El Salvador. To what end? To bring back criminal illegal aliens, to bring back murderers and rapists and child molesters who are MS-13 gang members, because he would send the army to say, you know what? We don't have enough criminals and murderers and rapists. I'm going to send the army to bring us some more. That is today's Democrat Party, but holy cow.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm kind of digging the honesty here, right? And this is coming from the same. Now, also be clear. Joe Biden said Hunter Biden was the smartest man he knew. So this is the guy that's like, watch this. Here's foreign policy. If you want to know who was running the White House, what does worry me is how much Hunter Biden was around the White House.
Constantly,
and around
on emails. He was plugged in. If there was any foreign despot, if there were any enemy of America, Hunter Biden was plugged in. Why? Because he would then shake down people for tens of millions of dollars. This guy, look, we are watching one of the great businessmen of modern times because he has figured out he could sell access to daddy and favors from daddy and make tens of millions of dollars. And look, you listened to his answer just a minute ago where he said if he were president, he would send in the military to invade El Salvador to bring back illegal immigrants. You might think, this guy loves illegal immigrants. He just has a warm spot. He has a heart for immigrants. He thinks they're wonderful, incredible people. Well, not so much. Listen to this clip where he describes what he really thinks of the illegal immigrants that daddy led into this country.
People are really upset about illegal immigration. You. How do you think your hotel room gets cleaned? How do you think you got food on your table? Who do you think washes your dishes? Who do you think does your garden? I would pick up the phone and call the president of El Salvador and say, you either send them back or I'm going to invade. It's a crime what they're doing. He's a dictator.
Well, look, that is what Hunter thinks of immigrants. They clean hotels. They clean your dishes. It reminds me of that wackadoodle Democrat congresswoman from Vermont who said, if we don't let in illegal immigrants, who's going to wipe your ass? I mean, it is a level of contempt and condescension.
It's racism 101, isn't it?
Yeah, look, they look down on the illegals that they allowed to flood into this country, but they think they're dumb enough that they will end up voting for Democrats ultimately. So it's all about political power. But this is the condescension and contempt. And Hunter is not unique. He is today's Democrat Party. They have everything is politics. And partisan politics, they are willing to endanger your family and my family if they believe it will elect more Democrats.
The takeaway from this interview was, for me, two big themes. Number one, it is scary who had access to this White House and influence over the president, especially when he was in such a cognitive decline. That terrifies me that Hunter Biden was around and flying on Air Force One and involved in meetings and was read in and was on all the email chains that we've witnessed recently. That's number one. But number two, it also tells you, I think, about just the disarray of the Democratic Party and the fact that they turned so quickly on Joe when they saw the debate. And now he's like, well, I want to burn it all down. And everybody that didn't stand with my dad, how dare you? And I may even come back and run for president. Like, there's a derangement aspect of the Biden family at this moment.
And listen, I don't fault Hunter for defending his dad. I actually support familial loyalty. But he is lashing out in a way that is unhinged and unconnected to reality. He's mad at George Clooney. He's mad at David Axelrod. He's mad at the Democrats. And one exchange, he explains, he actually broke some news. He said the person who was responsible for his father being pulled from the ticket, and it turns out, according to Hunter, it was Nancy Pelosi. Here, give a listen.
Yeah.
And you would have the Speaker Emeritus that would say, well, you know, I'm going to leave it up to, but I don't know. And they had already made a decision. They had clearly made a decision. And when I say they, I mean the Speaker. And, you know, I heard Alexander Pelosi say something, call my mom, like, put your big girl pants on to my mom or something. And I kind of feel like saying, who the do you think you are? I would never speak about your mom that way.
Yeah.
I would never speak about your father that way. I would never insult your parents that way.
He would never. But he's really mad about it right now.
He would never, except for the moments that he is.
Yeah.
All right. Let's shift to the next topic, which is violence in America. Look, the last 5 years, we've seen a pattern of riot after riot after riot. We saw in 2020 the Black Lives Matter and Antifa riots. We saw cities all across this country lit on fire. We saw police cars firebombed. We saw stores looted. We saw people murdered. We saw, following October 7th, anti-Semitic riots and hostile protests on college campuses all across this country, especially in bright blue liberal states. And now, this year, we've seen violent protests, typically in Democrat cities, started in Los Angeles, spread across the country, in favor of illegal immigrants, in favor of Venezuelan gang members, opposing deportation, saying we want as many criminal illegal aliens in this country. There is a pattern behind all of these, which is these are not organic. These are not just people who got pissed off and decided I'm going to go protest. There is money behind these. Checks are being written that are funding them. And so I introduced legislation this week called the Stop Funders Act. And what the Stop Funders Act does is very simple. It adds to the list of predicate crimes for RICO rioting. Now, what does that mean? RICO is legislation that is used to go after racketeering. It is very powerful legislation that prosecutors have used to go after the mob. And it goes after a criminal enterprise, a criminal organization. Right now, rioting is not one of the predicate crimes. But in this instance, if you want to go after, for 5 years, we have seen these violent riots. And look, I'm not the only person in the country who noticed that the anti-Semitic riots on college campuses, that many of the protesters had matching tents.
Yeah.
There are clearly checks being written. Some of them, I believe, are from foreign nations like Qatar or Iran, but others are from radical left-wing organizations. And during the Biden administration, you and I on this podcast repeatedly called on the Department of Justice to follow the money. With Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, I've told both of them, follow the money, prosecute the people who are writing checks, not just the thugs who are on the street, who are attacking police officers, who are attacking innocent people, but the people who are paying for it all. And going after the money is the best way to stop these violent riots. And if we don't, they will continue, because understand the radical left wants them to continue.
Yeah, this is one of those where, as you mentioned, follow the money. It's very clearly well organized. We're seeing this even over the last 2 weeks when they've gone after the President of the United States of America. And we see all these, protests that they try to act like they're spontaneous. No, they're paid for. They're funded. They're well organized, Senator. Everyone can see it. And so the question people, I'm sure, are going to say, well, hold on a second. If I want to spend my money to support a protest, why should I be held accountable for that if they decide to get angry or violent on their own? How do you separate those two things?
Well, you have to demonstrate under RICO that you're part of a criminal enterprise and the predicate act. Rioting is different from protesting. Peaceful protest is protected by the Constitution. But rioting is not. When you're using violence, when you're using weapons, when you're intimidating, when you're threatening, when you're hurting, when you're murdering people. And many of these riots have involved people being killed. That is fundamentally different. And I'll use an example, one we've talked about occasionally on this podcast. Last year, for a period of about 9 months, Heidi and I had every Saturday morning pro-Hamas protesters at our house.
Yeah.
They would show up at 7 a.m. They would leave at 8. When they showed up, they would scream. They would bang cowbells. They would blow whistles, rather. Thankfully, they did not blow missiles, but they blew whistles.
That would have been intense.
Yeah, that would have been different. They would scream curse words. They cursed as much as Hunter Biden did. They dropped F-bombs over and over and over again. Look, we have teenage daughters. There are few things that can tick teenagers off more than waking them up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Teenagers like to sleep in. Certainly my girls do.
Yeah.
And it was week after week after week. Now, what was striking, this was a job. It was clearly paid for. They showed up at 7 a.m. They left at 8 a.m. That was what they were paid for. 1 hour, boom, they were done. And then after 9 months, Ben, it just stopped. And it didn't trickle off. It didn't occur only occasionally.
It was like the money was over.
The instant the money was over, it was done. And
so, in other words, these weren't actual protesters. These were paid agitators.
Yeah, look, this is apparently the living they have as they go to places where people pay them to scream and yell and be obnoxious. And in the case of the riots, you have people who are criminals who will engage in violence. But the real driver behind this is the money. It's the funders. And we need to go after and cut off the money.
So if you cut off this money, how long does it take for this to become a thing where people are then afraid to fund these types of things, these extremist riots? And how fast could these RICO laws be used if this becomes reality?
Yeah, it doesn't take long. Look, one or two people writing checks gets prosecuted, gets put in jail, and people will be very reluctant. It's much like funding terrorism. Look, you and I and normal people don't write checks to Hamas, because if you write checks to Hamas, they will prosecute you and put you in jail. And so there is a high threshold. The Department of Justice has brought a lot of cases for people funding terrorist organizations. These violent riots, they're not organic. They're not just occurring. If you look at the college campuses where they've arrested people, they typically find about half the people there are not students and not affiliated with the university. They've showed up because their business is rent a riot. Yeah. And listen, I'm interested in the thugs who are engaging in violence, but I'm more interested in the people who are sitting there funding this and saying, we're going to tear down our country. We're going to tear down our universities. We are going to promote radical hatred of Jews, hatred of America, hatred of our Constitution. And the key is going after the money. By the way, it speaks volumes. In the entire Joe Biden presidency, they did not indict anybody for funding these protests. They did not prosecute anybody for funding these protests. And the reason, Ben, is the same people writing checks and funding these protests are the same people writing checks and funding Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And they're not going to go after their donors because their donors are paying the bills. And by the way, these are also the people that funded Mondani's campaign in New York, who's an open Marxist. He's not a socialist. He's not a leftist. He is a communist. And that is who is funding this, is people who support destroying this country. We need serious, focused law enforcement and all the tools to go after the people who are paying to undermine this country.
Yeah, it's a great point. What are the chances you think this becoming a reality, by the way, for people that are excited?
I don't know. Right now, we have no Democrats supporting it. We have a number. We have 7 Republicans who are supporting it. We have no Democrats.
By the way, I wonder why, right? No Democrats, I wonder why. It's
because these are their donors. These are the people that fund their campaigns. My hope is I'm going to press for us to have a vote. I want to put the Democrats on record. My guess is most, if not all, the Democrats will vote no. I don't want to go after the funders of these riots because they won't say this, but because we, the Democrats, support the riots. But let's put them on record. Let's have them take a position, because this ought to be a simple, common sense position. And my suspicion is every Democrat will vote no, but if they do, that will be highly, highly revealing.
I want to move to something else, and this is about securing our skies. Law enforcement and drones and public safety are something I think a lot of people are paying attention to, especially since we really exposed this on Verdict, where we were talking about how the cartels have got an amazing ability to use drones now. They are heavily advanced and have invested in this technology for drones to be able to see what we're doing on our side of the border, see when Border Patrol agents are going one direction or the other so they can get people across, drugs across. It's incredible. There's also another national security standpoint on drones as well. We've witnessed what drones have become in this war with Russia and Ukraine.
Yep,
and it
absolutely
terrifies me what we're seeing now with drone technology and how drones are changing warfare. And unfortunately, you're seeing it have a massive impact on the number of casualties between Russia and Ukraine. You combine those two things, the cartels, the drugs, the human trafficking, sex trafficking, child trafficking, the fentanyl, and the war aspect of this, and there's nefarious individuals, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the list goes on and on. You guys are looking at this from an issue of we got to secure our skies with this new legislation that you're advocating for. Talk about that.
Well, war often foreshadows the next threats we will face, the next threats we will face from terrorism, the next threats we will face from criminal attacks. And you're right. The war in Ukraine right now, if you look at how drones are being used, it illustrates the profound threat. We had a hearing this week in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I raised some questions on this. I laid this out. Give a listen to what I had to say in the Judiciary Committee hearing this week. In 2024, Thomas Crooks flew a drone over a Trump rally site for 11 minutes, scouting the grounds before his attempted assassination of President Trump. That same year, drones hovered over Naval Air Station Fort Worth for more than 2 hours, unintercepted. At our southern border, cartels now operate drone fleets, smuggling fentanyl, coordinating illegal crossings, and jamming U.S. surveillance. They've formed specialized drone units. They've dropped bombs. They've deployed jammers. Drones right now are outpacing our law enforcement at every turn. In our prisons, drones drop weapons, phones, and fentanyl, arming inmates and fueling the deadliest drug epidemic in American history. And here's the most damning part. Cartels right now have more drone capability than American law enforcement. Let me repeat that. Cartels today have more drone capability than American law enforcement. Mr. Hardy, you work at the intersection of law and policy regarding drones at the DOJ. Is it true that only a handful of federal agents under narrow legal authority can intercept or disable a drone?
Thank you, Senator. That is generally true under the 2018 Act that gives DHS and DOJ authority to conduct detection and mitigation operations.
That's shocking, Senator. That's it. Like you want to talk about being behind the eight ball? Like, good grief.
Yes, and it's not just at the hearing. We also got into the fact that federal law enforcement is highly limited, and actually state and local law enforcement is even more limited. So understand the threat we're going to face. We are going to see a major terrorist attack carried out by drones. We are going to see people killed via drones. We may see a drone flown into a commercial airline. We are going to see, I believe, political leaders assassinated using drones. The threats are massive, and right now, the authority of law enforcement to take out a drone, if there's a drone that is over a sports stadium, for a football game, a baseball game, a World Cup game, right now, there is extremely limited, almost no authority to take out that drone, even moments before it detonates a bomb or distributes a bioweapon or engages in some other act of terrorism.
This is the most scary, I think, part about red tape with government. Is if you see a threat and it's there, it's almost like you have to hope that law enforcement will just say, I'll deal with whatever the consequences later because I know I'm doing the right thing. And you worry that people are like, well, hold on a second. You can't do that. You don't have the authority. And then the worst case scenario happens. Yeah,
look, and this hearing is driving, we need legislation that gives law enforcement the authority to protect us, to take out drones that are a threat to airplanes. I am very concerned about an aviation accident of a drone getting in the way of a commercial aircraft. We need authority to take out drones that pose a threat to civilians, pose a threat to sports gatherings, pose a threat, as I laid out, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. The assassin who shot President Trump used a drone initially to scout it out. This is coming, and it is dangerous, and I think we have a responsibility to act and to act. You know, there's a long phenomenon that when it comes to warfare, generals far too often fight the last war rather than the next war. if you look at the war in Ukraine, it gives us a window into the future because drones allow for asymmetric attacks. For those who lack power, to use a $400 drone to take out a multi-million-dollar tank or a multi-million-dollar fighter jet. That asymmetry is dangerous, and I think we need real leadership on the part of the Trump administration, real leadership on the part of Congress to enhance our ability to stop dangerous drones and to recognize this is the next frontier for warfare, for terrorism, and for threats of violence against civilians across this country.
Final question on this. Do you believe this is at least one of those issues where you can get bipartisan support, that this won't be Republican v. Democrat and make this so hard to do? Are Democrats on board with this because it's a national security issue?
So I hope so. I don't know yet if Democrats will be willing to work together. It should be. I mean, this ought to be a level of common sense that people would recognize this threat is not a partisan threat. It's not a right-wing threat or a left-wing threat. It's a vulnerability we have as a society. And so I'm certainly going to try to get Democrats and Republicans to come together, but I will say it is early, so we don't know for sure. But this ought to be an issue that brings us all together.
Yeah, it's a great point. Don't forget, we do this show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Hit that subscribe or auto-download button wherever you get your podcasts. So that you don't miss a single episode of Verdict with Ted Cruz. And the Senator and I will see you back here on Friday morning.